How's it going, everybody? And welcome to your May 2021 horoscope for Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius rising. My name is Cam White. Thank you so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I'm super excited to talk about what the fire signs are going to be going through this May. Before you jump to your sign that you're going to watch, just know that I write these specifically for the rising signs. Of course, you can watch whatever you want. However, this is more specifically towards the rising sign. Anyway, as well, make sure if you want to, I write these monthly horoscopes week by week, so you can follow up on my weekly horoscope that I put out as well. So if this is your first time on my channel, make sure that you subscribe to get notifications for my weekly horoscope. And with that being said, I guess I'll see you on the other side. All right, Aries, May 2021. We start the first week off. The first week's going to be kind of a little bit weird because, you're communicating and acting a lot more with your friends at this time, but some of your ideas or maybe the way that you communicate might rub off the wrong way. There's some type of, ideas not blending well together in the form of how you're communicating them with your friendships. You might feel like you can't meet a lot of social pressures due to focus on like financial stuff. That's going to be the other thing as we kind of start the week. However, There's good stuff. There's some good stuff with money. It's not all that bad. But once Mercury enters Gemini, that's when your mind is just going to get much more focused on communication, how you're communicating, how you're expressing these ideas. I think that, the beginning of the week is going to kind of make you look a little bit more at your communication. You might feel also more pressured to like go out and buy more and spend more at this point, especially from friends, like especially if you're joining a community or you're just really going out a lot at this point. You might feel pressured to spend more money than you might have, or like you might feel pressured to foot the bill for people too. So don't feel like you have to spend money or that like you have to do extravagant things, because it's going to be easy to like kind of go overboard with the extravagant stuff. But once Venus enters Gemini, pretty much at the end of the week, you're going to pretty much start really going like, okay, I need to do more with my money. I need to, make it work for me. I need to organize it, understand it better. And this is also going to focus too a little bit more on when Venus enters Gemini, just being a little bit more fun with your communication, being able to be a little bit more, or try to connect a little bit more when you communicate. So mind you, I didn't even bring this up, but May is a really crazy month, by the way, so I'm kind of like really focused here, but week 2 has a lot going on. Week 1 is really not that crazy, but week 2, you're going to have like a really intense rush of thoughts. Mercury conjoining the North Node, you're going to feel like very expressive, like you need to write, like you need to understand, like you need to also apply your ideas too. You're going to be wanting to just express, understand, communicate. The new moon in Taurus that we'll have, that's just pretty much just going to be during the second week. You'll pretty much just kind of, go back over your budget. It'll kind of level out your money. You're not, all of the spending and all of the other stuff that was going in and out, that's kind of settling down now. So you can kind of get things a little bit more leveled out now with your finances and whatnot. Mercury's going to trine Saturn. You're going to you're going to be able to communicate very, very effectively this week, especially within relationships, especially within these groups. In fact, just relaying important messages in these social spheres. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, which is happening in May, by the way. I can't believe I'm saying this. This is the first May horoscope I'm recording, so it's just weird actually saying it right now. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, a lot more of your vision is going to become a lot more idealistic, and you're going to feel this urge to like need to explore the depths of your mind. Like there's going to be this sense of like, I need to go within, like to really understand. Like it's kind of like, I also would say the analogy with Aries risings, like the war mentality, right? Like like I hate to say it's just like a vibe pretty much, but as Jupiter goes into Pisces, you're going to become a lot more idealistic and just much more focused on like what's running the show, the subconscious mind that you've got going on, what's going on back there, and you'll see where you self-sabotage, but it'll be mostly, though, like what beliefs or idealism actually keeps you like afloat. So I think that would be really cool. But Mercury's going to enter shadow. We have the Mercury retrograde coming up. Mercury's going to enter shadow. You can pretty much bet that you're going to have a pretty bad miscommunication. Well, not necessarily bad, but it's going to be a miscommunication, like for sure. It's in your house of communication. It's Mercury, all that stuff. But as Venus, well, the thing is Mercury enters shadow, right? So this is going to be the time to start paying attention to your communication. You're probably going to say something that you're going to come back to, or a family friend or a neighbor or a sibling says something to you that you are going to come back to. So it's just the time to pay attention. But more towards the end of the week, you're going to have this like really big drive to kind of like pleasure yourself, pleasure your mind. There's kind of like this intense pull to like, and also like do something along with money, relationships. Money and relationships kind of gets extremed in a way, more towards the end of the week too. Now for the Aries risings, week 3, I was going over, I write all of these horoscopes out now. And I'm sitting here looking at this because week 3, what's cool about week 3 is you're going to start making like really strong connections with your friends and your allies. Like, I mean, like just that it's that connection. Think of like, think of the first couple weeks after lockdown and everyone was like doing Zoom phone calls and FaceTimes, like really similar time to that, like really making strong, communicative connections. But you're going to be kind of dealt with a dilemma, and I'm not sure how this is going to look, but what I wrote down, and this is, I'm still going to I still understand where I came from when I say this, but someone that you may not have trusted, or someone that you may have trusted, or my bad, hold on. Someone that you may not have trusted before may end up being trustworthy. And there might be this sense of kind of like understanding something new. Someone that you may have judged before is actually like on your side. I'm curious how that's going to look, but someone's going to flip-flop in a sense, but not in like they turn their back on you, maybe in a sense. But anyway, Mercury's going to square Neptune too. So there's going to be some type of hidden message. There's going to be a misinterpretation of something. That's where I really think it may not even be a miscommunication, but a misinterpretation, not understanding the information all of the way. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen in week 3 when Mercury squares Neptune. There might be even a hidden message or hidden intentions with someone else, from someone else. But as the week ends and Saturn stations retrograde, that's pretty much where you're going to know who's your friend and who's your enemy. Whose side are you on and whose side are you not on? Because with Saturn, and this is also with work stuff too. This is going to be, where do you have to draw the line with as an authority? Where do you draw the boundary essentially? Then we get to week 4 and we get to eclipse season. May's honestly a dramatic month. Like this is going to be really interesting recording the rest of these horoscopes in my opinion. But the eclipse, the total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius is really going to, I think, reveal a dramatic releasing for a lot of people. But for the Aries risings, you're learning a lot, and it's time to dump the old beliefs. This is shit that's been happening since last spring. You know what I mean? Especially last December. What really changed? What made you go, I don't think I see things that way anymore. As Venus squares Neptune, you're probably going to get really overstimulated with a lot of the information that you're getting. Like Venus is in Gemini, you're doing a lot, you're going here, you're going there. But I think Venus squaring Neptune, it might be stimulation overload. You might need some like sensory deprivation. You might get lost in a lot of the new info. Now, as Venus conjoins Mercury, so pretty much Venus is going to conjoin Mercury. Mercury's going to station retrograde, start going backwards. You're going to be communicating from like a really fun place of liveliness, fun, probably doing a lot of short distance traveling, really being able to express a lot of ideas, hanging out with people close to you. And I think with that Mercury stationing retrograde, I think you're just going to really get because for one, Mercury retrograde is going to be a miscommunication somewhere. But I think the Mercury retrogrades are a time of reflecting and reviewing, and you end up looking at a different part of your life differently. And I think the part of your life that has to do with what's close to you, how do you understand what's around you? How do you communicate with those around you? Your local environment, right? This is just going to be kind of like seeing that in a different light, seeing that in a different picture. But once Mercury stations, the miscommunication is going to come up, and you're going to really see things differently. Mars trine Neptune is really going to give you the intuition of like what to protect and who to protect and when to protect yourself. Like when do you need to play defense, and when do you need to go within to kind of do some, I don't want to say healing, but like sometimes we all need to go to sleep sometimes. And at the end of the week, as the sun conjoins the North Node, you're going to feel very driven and empowered by, I think, the new mode of the new way that you're operating. And that's May. May's really, I think, for you guys, really has to do a lot with money and friends at the beginning. And then once we get towards the end, things get kind of like metaphysical and spiritual and kind of much more like up here and less physical and everything. But see ya. All right, Leo. A lot of stuff going on for you guys this month. Let's go ahead and get it cracking. Week 1. The way that you vocalize yourself publicly might constrain some relationships that would, like you would rather not have limits on. It's kind of like when you have to, say no, or, certain ideas may not really mesh well with other people or a specific relationship, especially regarding the workplace. But it's not horrible. Career is good, solid. I think you're going to be really enjoying it. It's perhaps idealistic much more at this time in the beginning of the week, but once Mercury enters Gemini, you're going to be much more focused, like mentally, kind of just everywhere, mentally really though, on your friends, your community. You're going to find yourself a lot more active and playing a role there, whether that's communicating more, mediating more, being more mercurial, being in between spaces. Now, you'll have to reconcile the boost in work and relationships because you're not going to have time for both. I think that's going to be one of the issues that you really see more towards the end of the week is like, you got a lot of good here, you got a lot of good there, but there's only so much time in a day. You know what I mean? You're just so popular, so having so much fun. I would look at, though, the good stuff. It's really, that's why I use the word reconcile. This is kind of like, sometimes you choose this, sometimes you choose that. It's not a good or bad thing at all. But you can't have your cake and eat it too at certain points. But as Venus does enter Gemini, you're going to be much more devoted to enjoying your social circles. And in fact, you might be able to just be more sociable versus at the beginning of the week, you're going to be still kind of focused on career stuff in general. It gets more sociable, more friendlier as time goes on. All right, then we get to week 2. And like, mind you, May is a spicy month. May is when shit finally starts getting cracking here in the astrology world. It's been kind of chill since like January. But So beginning of week 2, your mind, your thoughts, you're going to be really it's going to be really immensely focused on social spheres. And there's probably going to be something that happens, not necessarily means it's bad, but there's an event that occurs that will eventually play a role in something later on at the beginning of the week. So just pay attention to that, especially the way that you're communicating, the way that you're interacting with your friends, or what your friends perhaps say. The new moon in Taurus, you're actually going to be able to create a little bit of peace and get things kind of settled and get a little bit more comfortable and grounded in your workplace, with this new work position or all of this, this new level up that you're kind of occurring here. You're finally going to get that settled and feel more comfortable. You're going to be making a lot more strong connections with relationships and individuals within these friendship groups. Like, things get singular, which is really good. But man, Jupiter enters Pisces, and I'm curious of what this is going to be like for you guys, because as Jupiter enters Pisces, a bigger shift towards shared resources, other people's money, relationships money, right? People's finances, debt, inheritance, death, the occult, secrets, dark mystery stuff, right? Jupiter's going home into Pisces. Is going to dip in your 8th house. So I truly think you're going to probably get really deep into the occult, like really deep into some mystical crazy shit. Like, it's definitely happening. And of course, that's much more something that's happening in 2022. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, you're gonna get a really big whiff of what's to come, and I think it's gonna be good. A lot of good things are to come, but it is the 8th house. It is a scary place to kind of be in some sense. So the Jupiter entering Pisces thing is something that we'll talk more and more about. However, but Mercury is also going to enter shadow in week 2. So an idea or a conversation that you have with your friends, that's going to become readdressed. Something's going to happen where once Mercury enters shadow, something occurs, and whether it's a conversation or idea, you're going to readdress that. So just, again, pay attention, write this shit down or take some notes about it, just more mental notes. With this Mercury retrograde, though, I think you're really going to be redefining your social standings. As at the end of the week, as Venus conjoins Rahu, as Venus conjoins the North Node, expect to have topics related to communication and public image, like, really amplified. So, like, you're really public and a lot of people see you. And I think, again, this is why I said your social standing is going to change. It may not necessarily be for the bad. I don't think it's necessarily going to be bad, but I think it's going to change, if that makes sense. So I guess we'll see what that turns into. So we get into week 3. Week 3 is where things get really spicy. You're going to be enjoying your relationships. Again, like, this is a lot of good stuff. You're going to be enjoying your relationships. But as Gemini season starts, separating yourself from the group dynamic is going to become a little bit blurry. And so this is one of those things where everything's cool until it's not cool. And not that this is bad, but this is where it's there's a loophole, or there's something where where something that needs to be defined isn't going to be so easily defined, especially when it comes to the friends and how you're connected to them or that group. Mercury is going to square Neptune. That means that there's something being talked about as if it's the truth, but it's entirely unknown. I wouldn't trust it. It's too confusing. There is this, like, everyone wants to talk about it, but no one knows what they're talking about. So there's not a lot of progress. So I would just, with all the communication going on, hold on to it. Hold on to it like what's the fucking term? Like a grain of salt. That's what I'm thinking of. Hold on to it with a grain of salt. Because you're really not going to know what the answer is. There's going to be a lot of confusion with Mercury square Neptune. As Saturn stations retrograde, though, this is where you're going to start to deal with the harder side of responsibilities and obligations and duties that come with the relationships that you've been building up since last spring. Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn stationing retrograde, like. There's a lot of new stuff that's come along that's fun, but now dealing with the harder side of Saturn is like those, it's like, it's kind of like when you have a really solid job and you're working 40, 50 hours a week, it's great. And then there's those times you're like, God, fuck, I'm working a lot. Like, this is a lot of work. And you're going to start feeling that at about week 3. Like, things are going to, that weight's going to start to weigh on you a little bit. Then we get to week 4. Like I said, dude, May's a crazy month. May's kind of wild. I love it. But week 4, the total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, this is going to bring up what you need to release around recreational activities, pleasures, what's just getting old, what do you not enjoy anymore, throw it out, what's not you, what ideas have you had change about certain things that you enjoy. You might feel overwhelmed or overstimulated by all of the connections that you have at this point. So I think it's going to be really important to be aware to know when to separate your energy from others throughout the week. This isn't just on the eclipse. This is after the eclipse. But just throughout the week, just know it's, weekend. I feel like a 4-day weekend would be too long, right? 2 days is just enough. Venus is going to conjoin Mercury, right? Was Mercury stations retrograde, right? Venus is going to conjoin Mercury, and that for you really means that there's some type of positive and endearing message and connection between you and all of your friends and your community and your group, right? But as Mercury stations retrograde, something about that moment changes the dynamics between the social circle. So this could be, for one, Mercury retrogrades, retrogrades are bad inherently. That doesn't necessarily mean that like bad things can are like it's a bad situation, right? Like the one thing I bring up with Mercury retrogrades is like, honestly, it could just be a time of reflecting and reviewing, of like seeing how you operate with friends in a different way. Like there's going to be a perspective shift no matter what. It may not even be that relevant in your life. It may be very subtle. It may not be in your face, unless like Mercury's your time lord and you're like an 11th house year, like, and you're like a Gemini or something like that. I'm like, oh yeah, like this is going to fucking totally throw you for a loop. But the Mercury retrograde, I think as Mercury stations, there's something about that moment, the dynamics between the social circle switch. As we get to the end of the week with Mars trine Neptune, trust your intuition of when to be reclusive and defensive. Because you might become spotlighted in your community in almost sense. Like, you know, you're really active and you're going to be put in a lot of situations, not necessarily bad, but just you're going to be out and about. And there might be times where, you know, like if you feel called to like go within, like listen to that, because you're going to want to just trust your intuition of like when to be more reclusive and defensive and not be so meshed with other people's stuff. Right. And, that's May. So I'll see y'all next month. Sagittarius, what's up? My fellow I'm also a Sagittarius rising, so this is pretty much me talking to myself right now. Anyway, Sagittarius week 1. Well, honestly, I've been meaning to open this up with the other signs, but I've been forgetting. May's really fucking crazy. Like May has a lot of stuff going on. We've got eclipse season, Jupiter entering Pisces, Saturn stationing retrograde, a bunch of stuff. So just wanting to preface this with May is really crazy, number one. But as we start week 1, your mind is going to be much more focused on your schedule, your routine, your health. You're going to have a fixed position of what you want. But of course, not all of that may work with everything that you're trying to do. Like there's going to have to be this reconciliation with like your time management versus what you want to put on your schedule. And there's, you know, it's going to be kind of like you have duties, obligations here, and you're trying to change things here, but also you want to do this. It's going to be kind of back and forth. Not super crazy, much more mental, not so like out, and not so much life is out trying to get you. But you'll be enjoying your day-to-day health. You'll be much more positive, coming from, you know, maybe a certain rosiness coming from the home too, maybe just getting more in your vibe. As Mercury enters Gemini though, in week 1, your mind's going to get pretty much immediately focused on relationships. Like just expect to pretty much be almost solely focused on relationships for the next few months, or not for the next couple weeks, till like the end of June, pretty much. Your mind's going to get focused on relationships, and right after that, as Venus squares Jupiter in the week 2, the hard part is you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like Jupiter is wanting you to maximize your time, be more efficient, put more on, communicate bigger. And I think Venus squaring Jupiter is just going to kind of ask you of like, hey, sure, you're allowed to, if like when you're at a wedding, for example, I used to DJ a lot of weddings. It's like, you know, there'd be sometimes I would allow myself to have cake, but if I had cake every fucking time I DJ'd a wedding, like that wouldn't work. So it's kind of like allow yourself those spaces to maximize, right? Venus and Jupiter, but it's a square, right? Like have a little bit of, you know, temperance essentially. Do what you can, because you're not going to be able to fit everything on your schedule. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So prioritize and stop just like being lazy. Cause I also think with Venus and the 6th house, it's going to be really easy to like just wanting to like relax and be lazy in one sense. But as Venus enters Gemini at the end of the week, you're going to be much more sociable, and you're going to be pretty much solely looking to connect more with relationships, other people, so on and so forth. Week 2, shit just keeps building up. Honestly, I keep like, you know, now that I'm like, you know, a couple signs into this, May is cracking me up with how much it builds up. Week 2, Mercury's going to conjoin Rahu at the beginning of the week. And so this sounds like an extreme and possibly fatalistic meaning like fate, not death. Fate as in like, you know, out of your control, but cool. An extreme and fatalistic encounter with a person happens. So the Mercury retrograde stuff's going to start showing up essentially. Relationship stuff really gets brought up. The new moon in Taurus is going to really allow you to get resettled into your new routines and get more familiar with, you know, where things are at now that you've kind of changed some things up, get a little bit more comfortable. So that'll be nice. At this time too, you're going to be really clearly stating your ideas and connecting with others. That's that Mercury trine Saturn, you know, really being able to like just get the fucking message across. In my opinion. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, that's where things are suddenly going to expand, and I think your ideas or your ideals and your vision of what your living situation, home, family life, all of that's going to really come to like blossom in a really weird sense. Like it's kind of like kind of hits you in a sense, like, you know, for a lot of people, it's going to be like your living situation is going to get really cool and crazy. For some people, it's like good family stuff. It's a lot of cool stuff like that. Like we could be buying a house. Jupiter in Pisces is just really going to expand the living situation, like your foundation of like where you fucking root your whole life. That's also going to happen in 2022, but Jupiter's dipping into Pisces for a couple months, essentially this summer. And so we're going to get a really good taste of what's to come. But that starts week 2 of May. As Mercury enters shadow, though, because that also happens, as Mercury enters shadow, a lot of context is going to begin to form between what is going to happen between you and this relationship. And this also is work stuff, too. So this, I mean, because Mercury rules your 10th house. So, you know, this has to do with career stuff and for a lot of you. But the Mercury shadow phase is like where the either maybe miscommunication or the changing of your mind or the communication or maybe even misinterpretation that happens is going to happen on week 2 when Mercury enters shadow. Start paying attention then. At the end of week 2, Venus is going to conjoin Rahu, the North Node. And that's really going to bring an intense connection and stimulation to your friendships and your relationships and your work life. And so just busy, you know, doing your thing. A lot of relationship stuff. Week 3 is kind of weird, honestly. You're going to be connecting with people on similar ideas, shared values, pretty sociable, honestly, really good. But as Gemini season begins, you're pretty much going to be kind of given this challenge where between the living situation and relationships in your life and kind of how to integrate the two. Like it's the sun squaring Jupiter in Pisces while the sun goes into Gemini as eclipse season starts. But for some of you that might have been Japanese, and what that basically means in what I would see that as is there's good happening in the home living situation, and then there's a focus on relationships, but something between the two doesn't click. Not that one's bad and one's good or anything like that. It's not this like false dichotomy. It is a challenge though. It's a mental challenge. And I said integrate too, because that's really going to be the focus. How do you blend the two together? Mercury's going to square Neptune also, which honestly sucks. Because the Mercury square Neptune means communication is not going to be clear. It's not going to be legible. It's going to be idealistic. It's going to be passive, especially with family members. Like this is going to be where, you know, you got to take things like a grain of salt or take things with a grain of salt. Things can be really confusing and you're not going to get that clear communication. So also try to like hound it, you know what I mean, as much as you can. And this is with family members, people you live with, relationships too. But as Saturn stations retrograde at the end of the week 3, the harder, more like Saturnian side of all the new responsibilities and, you know, work that you've been taking on, especially in terms of, you know, your schedule, routine, the way that you're communicating with other people. For some of you, this could also be like money related. This could be like how you write, how you get a message across. As Saturn stations retrograde, the more serious parts of that are going to come alive. The more like you're going to start having to be a little bit more responsible, and that responsibility is going to start taking a lot of shape, I think, in your structure and your routine, meaning pretty much, you know, when you have a responsibility, that comes first. So I think you're going to see part of your routine shift towards going like, hey, I have obligations and duties that need to get addressed first before I do anything. And that's just Saturn direct is like, oh, I'm cool, I'm doing all of this. Saturn retrograde is like, I have to do this. Week 4 for the Sagittarius is pretty much Sagittarius. This is the only like horoscope where I'm like, okay, week 4 is going to be kind of difficult. Not bad, difficult though. Pretty much the total lunar eclipse that we're going to have in Sagittarius is pretty much going to be a really, like what I wrote down here was a true reckoning of identity. I know that's kind of intense sounding, but the relationships and the focus on other people in your life have taught you a lot. and you're realizing, you're shedding your skin and, over this past year, and it's a process, right? First, the skin of a snake, right, gets flaky and dry, and then it shrivels, and then it peels it, right? This is part of that process. And as the South Node has been through our first house, it's been draining, exhausting, tiring. You've been wrong. Like, there's just been so much releasing of things, right? Especially of the body. As this lunar eclipse happens, expect for that to, it's going to hit pretty hard. But you're changing. That's essentially all that's going on. Venus is going to square Neptune. Mind you, eclipse season now begins. But Venus is going to square Neptune, which means there's going to be a lot of confusion with what you want in general. However, there's also going to be this overstimulation with relationships. Like, just kind of, music's too loud, hanging out too much, need some space. It's a lot too going on, especially if you're hypersensitive. And there's going to be a confession or a genuine terms of endearment given to someone. When Mercury, that's Venus applying to Mercury. When Venus applies to Mercury, something positive is going to be said. However, as Mercury stations retrograde immediately after, the relationship dynamic with this individual now changes dramatically. So for a lot of you, this is probably going to be a relationship, probably for the majority of you. However, it's not like that for everybody. It is going to involve another person, though, for sure. This is totally you and someone else. It could be a romantic person. It could be a business partner. It could be an employee, employer. A lot of different options going on here. It could just be a friend, an individual. But the relationship dynamic changes once Mercury stations retrograde, and you start to review it and think about it differently and through a different light. Mars is going to trine Neptune, so you kind of have to trust your intuition of who to let in and give a safe space for. And as the sun conjoins Rahu at the end of the week, you'll be really drawn towards the relationships and that relationship in your life in extreme ways that are both, fun and exciting, but also dangerous in the sense that, cars are safe, but if you're going to not wear a seatbelt and go 120 miles an hour down the road, you can die. So it's going to be, try not to go too fast just because you can. One analogy I'd like to make is I'm really into urban planning, which is a very nerdy thing of me. I wonder if anyone else is out there that's into urban planning. But people are more comfortable going really fast on freeways because they have this wider range of view. So it makes it feel like they're safer versus the reason why you go slow and really tiny streets like this is because it's all closed, right? You can hit stuff. It makes you feel more narrowed and narrowed down. At the end of week 4, it's easy if you're driving, especially if you live out here in the desert. If I go between Arizona, Vegas, California all the time, and there's nothing out there, right? And it's so easy to hit 100, not even thinking about it. You're like, oh shit, I'm going really fast because you don't have anything to compare it to, right? You don't even see it. At the end of week 4, pay attention to how fast you're going, right? That's not to say, in the desert, there's no cops around, there's no one driving crazy. You could have your fun, right? But just pay attention is the best way to look at it. So, that's the May horoscope for you guys. So with that being said, I will be seeing you next month.